speak in churches, and also looking at resources that you can use within churches. And we'll be having an opportunity to go into breakout rooms a little bit later on in an area that you're particularly interested in, and some time for questions. So feel free to pop those in the chat throughout the meeting. And towards the end, you can also raise your hand if you've got any questions as well. Without any further ado, I'll pass on to lovely Jay. And if you want me to stop sharing, you can share your slides today. I'll do that now.
Thank you, Lily. Yes, I'll introduce myself so you can all see me before I share my slides, but it is so fantastic to be here with you all. So I'm Jay Senior. I look after all things Christian Aid Week here at Christian Aid alongside a really fantastic team. And I'm also responsible for volunteering here at Christian Aid too. So double pleasure to meet you all as volunteers as well. Darren and Charlotte asked me to come along today to share my experiences. So last year I had the pleasure of going to Guatemala to collect all of the wonderful stories you'll see today about this year's Christian Aid Week. It was an incredible trip with so many lessons. So my hope here today is that I can share some of those experiences with you and really convey some of that passion that has come from the trip, so that when you're talking about Christian Aid Week and you're talking about Amelia and Aurelia and their beautiful lives and their stories, it's a lot easier for you to do so as well. So I'll share my screen. Can someone just let me know that all is okay and that you can see it before I start rambling?
Yeah, we can see that.
Brilliant. So this is just a quick snapshot of me butchering my Spanish, trying to talk to one of the partner staff members in Guatemala. And like I said, it was a fantastic trip. So I'll tell you a little bit more about it. So to give you some context about our work in Guatemala, Christian Aid partners with an organisation called COICOP to support Indigenous agricultural farming communities who are fighting the extremely harsh effects of climate change. So for the Indigenous mine communities, the climate crisis is causing severe food and water security. The farmers in these villages are operating with no electricity, no easy water access, very little food due to their crops drying out, and they also are an Indigenous population. So I think what really struck me as quite a harsh reality was the fact that, you know, this is their native country, but they don't speak Spanish. They speak Quechua, which is the local Mayan language. So on top of no electricity, obviously no internet, and limited water access, limited food access, they are also quite alienated in terms of having their rights defended and having access to kind of community support outside of kind of their local community. So it's quite a severe situation that's happening. And what COICOP does is they come in to provide agricultural support to these Indigenous farmers by providing training on how to combat the climate crisis. So they teach the farmers about adopting sustainable farming methods, cultivating native seeds, and drought resilient and flood resilient crops. They help them learn about how to produce organic fertilizer, how to conserve water, and also how to sell their produce locally so they can generate income to buy more diverse foods. So if they're not able to grow the foods, then they might be able to produce an income to then buy foods at local markets as well. So this is just a bit of a behind the scenes of what happened on the trip.
Hi, I'm Jay and I look after all things Christian Aid Week here at Christian Aid. Come with me to Guatemala and follow the team as we collect this year's Christian Aid Week stories. Join us as our partner COICOP takes us around the Alto Verapaz region and introduces us to the Indigenous farming communities we work with. Right now, we're on a road leading up to Amelia's house. Amelia is an incredible, powerful, outspoken woman. She's the nominated person from her community that attends the partner training and learns lots of useful farming techniques to combat the effects of climate change. Amelia's been taking this walk down to the river from her home all her life. She played there as a kid and now she takes her own children there to wash and play. There was a lot of giggling and laughing down at the water. We get up at 4 a.m. every day here in order to meet the community. People get up as early as possible to do things here before the day gets too hot. Even at 4 a.m. it's about 35 degrees. During the long car journeys, we're all sitting in silence, decompressing from everything we've learned and seen, and we're just so hot and tired. I think what will stay with me is just how peaceful and beautiful their homes and family lives are here, and how strong the community life is. But because of that reliance on the land, the changing climate has hit these farming communities so hard. I would love for you to find out more about Amelia and the other brilliant people we met in Guatemala by visiting caweek.org.
For these types of short videos, we are trying to make more of, so to make it easier for you to share more on social media and also within churches, kind of a bit more kind of happens in the background for how we collect resources and share stories for Christian Aid Week. So as you know, each Christian Aid Week, we focus on telling human stories, so stories of particular people that we come across who are supported by our partners in country. So this year we're bringing you these stories of Amelia and Aurelia, who are two incredible women who are in different stages of their journey with Christian Aid and our partner. So this is Amelia. She is super smiley. She's a resourceful, determined 24-year-old farmer who lives at home with her husband and two children, her son, his 8 years old, Lazaro, and her 4-year-old daughter, Jacqueline. I think with Amelia, what really struck me was how instantly relatable we found each other. So we're both mothers of little ones, and we bonded over the fact that our kids are super wild. None of us get enough sleep. And we talked about the fact that, you know, children are so messy and so, you know, they never stop talking, but also they're so full of love and they're so full of warmth. But I think the key difference between Amelia's story and my story was just the level of worry and concern that Amelia had was just not something I could ever relate to. So Amelia spoke about the fact that, you know, their diets went from being cassava and plantain and cacao and pumpkin and pineapple and lots of these rich foods that they have the pleasure of growing in Guatemala to now, you know, basically surviving on small portions of tortilla and rice. Even eggs are quite hard to come by, and they have chickens, but unfortunately the heat is so bad that all of their crops are dying. They have nothing to sell at market. Their nutrition is becoming a lot more limited in what they have available to them. And so Amelia's worries are more focused around how to keep her children healthy, how to prevent malnutrition, and also how to make it so that, you know, they can afford to send their children to school. So huge, you know, differences in how we experience motherhood. And I think for Amelia, you know, she was quite an introverted person, but, you know, spoke very, very passionately about the fact that, you know, her community didn't cause the climate crisis, but actually they're the ones that are feeling it harshest. And she said quite plainly that it wasn't fair. And so for her, she put herself forward to be the leader for her community, to go to this training that our partner delivers, to learn more about farming techniques, to learn more about trading seeds and water recycling systems, so that she could come back and teach the other women in her community what she'd learned and hopefully make a difference in terms of improving their water security and their food security. So these are just a couple of shots that we took whilst in Guatemala. This is Amelia washing little Jacqueline's hair in the river. I think what was interesting about the river is listening to Amelia's reflections for how much the river has changed. So the river is really central to Amelia's life. She grew up around the river. You know, they've played there. It's partly their water source during times of year. They wash their bodies there. But the river used to come up to, you know, their necks, and now it's so shallow. It's, you know, you can see in the picture, it's by their knees. So it's a huge change to how their way of life. And for them, you know, on top of their daily worries, they're seeing this really harsh long-term change in their environment, which I think, you know, she spoke about how she mourns it on a daily basis, seeing that kind of the land change so drastically and not feeling in control of that. You'll also see in the photo on the right is Amelia and her daughter standing in front of their dying banana tree. What you can't see, but it's right next to it, is also a cacao tree. And I think what's really powerful to mention is, you know, for Christian Aid Week in the past, those of you that have been there with us, we've told stories before of farmers in other countries that have switched from growing coffee beans to growing cacao, because cacao is very heat resilient and it's a great alternative when facing the climate crisis. And I think what's really stark to hear in Guatemala is that even the cacao plant, which is so resilient to heat, is dying. So the level of extreme heat is just, there are no words. There are no words, you know, to experience 43-degree heat on a daily basis. It was just really, really harsh to experience. And this is a shot of Amelia and one of the partner staff, Donaldo, who is kind of talking her through her crops in a nursery and how to grow the native seeds. It was just a lovely experience to see the kind of care and patience that the COICOP staff take to kind of talk these farmers through different techniques and visit them and have a look at how their crops are doing. So by working with COICOP, Amelia is pushing back against the climate crisis. And this is Aurelia. I love that this year they've got rhyming names. It means you'll never forget them. So Aurelia is also just an incredible, inspirational farmer. She's a community leader and a true matriarch of her family and her community. You can just see the love in her face. I love talking about her. She has 8 grown-up children, 5 daughters, 3 sons, and she lives with one of her sons and his wife. So every day her home is filled with laughter. I think we can all relate to that grandmother or be that grandmother that is the central hub for all kids. So everybody gravitates to her home, and she's so proud of that. And she takes pride of house to another level in the sense that she is so gracious, and her hospitality, despite, you know, the food scarcity and the water scarcity, was just on another level. She was so kind to us. And I think what really struck me most about Aurelia is her fierce determination and unwavering commitment to finding solutions and opportunities for her family and friends. The partner COICOP describes her as so tenacious. So despite the fact that she doesn't speak Spanish, I should say the partner themselves are Mayan, so they speak both Spanish and Quechua, which helps them connect the Mayan community with the wider society. The partner describes Amelia as tenacious because despite the fact that she doesn't speak Spanish, she goes down into the town and she is there to say, you know, my community needs this, my family needs this. What can I do? How can I get involved? What do I need to learn? So she is someone who will make things happen. So this is just a shot of the cacao to show kind of how dried up it is. So those that kind of know, you know, feel free to have a Google. You'll see that cacao should be a lot bigger, a lot rounder, and a lot more grown. So this is just an example of what it looks like when it's all kind of super dried out. Amelia's father also gave us a really powerful quote as well. He said, when we plant maize and corn, it grows to 50 centimeters, then dies. There's a lack of water, no food, and no harvest. And here is Aurelia and one of her neighbors, Sophia. So when Aurelia discovered the work of our partner, COICOP, she put herself forward to attend specialist agricultural training. She joins this training along with 22 members of nearby communities. So it's a bit of a train-the-trainer system. So these women nominate themselves as leaders of their community. They go to this training and they come back and they cascade it all to their village. So you'll see here they're holding up an illustration of kind of climate change effects in their community. It was a really, really informative day to kind of see how the training happens and how valuable the women find the day. So another thing that COICOP does with Aurelia, which I thought was really interesting, was they help Aurelia and her community to diversify their diet by teaching them how to make really cool things. So they provided a dehydrator to help Aurelia take plantain and make plantain flour to create banana bread so they could sell it at market. They've also helped her create chocolate as well that she's selling at market. So she is able to now have an income where she can then use that money to buy more vegetables and crops that she can't grow, and also to put her grandchildren through school. So it's a really, really nice kind of, you can see the impact of Aurelia because she's been on the project for quite a while. And I think for Amelia and Aurelia as well, I think it's nice to mention kind of how important faith plays a role in their daily lives. Amelia told us, for me, faith is very important. It's a way for me to reach harmony in my life. It's a space for me to forgive and to be forgiven. So I think it was nice to hear about how they found peace in their faith despite kind of the harsh experiences they were going through. So I'll just play you now the Christian Aid Week 2025 film. So this is the one that you can use in churches to kind of share the story. It summarizes everything I've just said, and tells you a little bit more about the full context.
Drought and deforestation are decimating Guatemala's landscape.
The climate is getting hotter every day. It's killing our plants, and it's killing us.
Malnutrition rates in children are dangerously high.
If you ask me, it's not fair that people are exploiting these resources and benefiting from it, and we are the ones affected and don't have anywhere else to go.
Let justice flow down like water, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Amos 5:24.
El agua es vida.
Water is life.
Un ser.
It's a being.
Tiene vida.
It is alive. Our ancestors have instilled in us that we must give great respect to water, to the river. When arriving to collect water, when arriving to bathe, a person must say their name and greet the water. This is how we respect its value. Every day, indigenous farming communities in the Alta Verapaz region must fight the effects of extreme weather and land exploitation to survive.
As a child, I was here in the community, and I remember the river was deeper and bigger. There were crabs, shrimps, and big fishes, and I used to go fishing. I learned to swim here. Now it is very different. It is very shallow. Animals and fish have started dying. They're disappearing, either because there's a bigger population or because it's very contaminated. My plantations have been dying due to the lack of water, and in terms of how it's affecting me, well, there is no food for my family.
Esto es muy serio.
Climate change is very serious, because without water, we die. This is what's happening here in our territory.
The rivers and streams have dried up, and we have difficulty getting drinking water. This makes me feel very worried because I'm feeling increasingly older with less energy, and my health hasn't been that good recently. The plants are also dying and our crops are affected, so we are at risk of having no food. This is very worrying for our kids, especially our grandkids.
Christian Aid's partner, COECUP, offers vital training and tools to farmers like Amelia and Aurelia. They learn how to construct rainwater collection systems to capture precious water and are building their resilience to the effects of the climate crisis.
We really value the varied support from COECUP, especially the training. We have learned how to produce liquid and organic fertilizers, and also medicines for our animals, especially the chickens. And that's useful, as it also supports our food production.
Everything Aurelia learns, she shares with the women in her community. She makes chocolate and cacao bread and encourages other women to join her.
For me, creating chocolate is an art. I do it with all my heart, and perhaps that's the reason it tastes so good.
With COECUP, Aurelia's learned how to price and market her food products, creating a vital income. From funding seed trays and pruning scissors to solar dehydrators and training, every donation, no matter the size, will support families to protect themselves from hunger. This Christian Aid Week is 7 days to make a difference. What will you do?
I love the shot of Amelia smiling at the end. It always makes me smile. So I just want to quickly highlight some of the resources that you see this year, less so what they are, because I think a lot of you will be familiar with what we produce, but more so the 7 days to make a difference messaging. So this is something that's quite new to Christian Aid Week. We are aiming to reimagine Christian Aid Week to help get more people to support Christian Aid Week and more churches to get involved. And 7 days to make a difference is our proposition for what Christian Aid Week is, right? So it's 7 days where we can all come together as Christians and non-Christians across the UK to activate and make a difference across a super duper special week. So when you see 7 days to make a difference, please know that that is Christian Aid Week. And when you're talking about Christian Aid Week, I would really encourage you to use the messaging of 7 days to make a difference. So this is what it looks like up close. You'll see it on all of our resources this year. You'll see it in our films, on our website, in our advertising, on TV. It's our, think, comic relief, do something funny for money. Well, this is Christian Aid Week, 7 days to make a difference. That's it from me presentation-wise, but I'm very much looking forward to talking through things now and answering any questions you might have.
Yeah, that's a question. Can
I have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to.
Can I ask? Don't see many men around in the activities there, which a little bit disappointing. Jay, I don't know. Maybe it goes without saying that the women are the ones who are going to do the work. But I think it's important we include the men folk in the system.
Yeah, I was hoping that someone would ask me this, because I do think it's a common question that comes up with international development charities, right? Where are the men? And so the reality is, when you go on these trips and we say our supporters always feedback that we want more men in the stories, etc. And we do try, but the reality is, the men wake up at 3:30 in the morning. They're off to do kind of labour work in kind of in the main towns, etc., from about 4 a.m. and then they don't return till about kind of 8-9 p.m. in the evening. So a lot of the programs that Christian Aid fund and the projects that work, the way the projects work is they support the women primarily, because the women are the ones who are then working on the land whilst the men are away doing kind of the more income related work, I guess. So that is the accurate truth of the story. So when we're collecting content, we're doing it in a really truthful way. That is the reality. The men are away from home. I think I probably saw Aurelia's granddad, and once I think I saw her son, and that's the most I saw across the trip for the whole 15 days. And so this is accurate to the experiences of people in the community. The men are away for the bulk of the time. It is something we will try and capture more next year. I'm currently looking at where we'll be going for the next trip. But this is the scenario you do get a lot of the time when you're documenting international development work. It's the women tend to be at home whilst the men are away working for very, very long hours.
Thank you, Jane. Good answer.
Peter, I can see you've got your hand raised. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, very, very interesting, Jay. Thanks for that. Can you tell us a bit more about, is it koi cop or kong coop or what?
Yeah, well,
can you tell us a bit more about it and how you pronounce
Peter. It? Yeah, well, this is the thing with organizations in different countries, they tend to use acronyms a lot. So COICOP is an acronym in Spanish, which I cannot say. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but despite it being an acronym, call it COICOP. So that's how we are, of course, then therefore saying it. So COICOP have 3 branches, actually, and they do a lot of work. They do advocacy work with women. They do advocacy work fighting for water rights with the local government. And they also support with agricultural training, which is the main thing that Christian Aid funds. That's our kind of big project helping to combat climate change. So what COICOP do is they tap into kind of ancestral Mayan knowledge, they tap into kind of local farming techniques. They are able to be the bridge between a community that is quite isolated and the wider Guatemala population. So they are always the go-between, helping these quite vulnerable communities to be able to kind of integrate into wider society, but also do very basic things like have access to clean water, have access to more food, to more diverse food sources, learn how to sell things at markets so that they can generate an income to then get more diverse foods for their families, and also do things like send their children to school, etc. So they go so much further than just kind of water recycling systems and, you know, organic fertilizer, etc. They are kind of a lifeline to help connect people into the wider society, but also advocate and really fight for their rights as well.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Steve, got your hand up. Andrew Jenkins, have you got a question?
Yeah, I do. Well, I'd just like to say I really appreciate this material. I think it's great. I think the combination of the things that are described, you know, they are very tough, but I think you've covered some really important points. And I've been working quite a long time with people in the Bay of Bengal who are losing their land through rising sea level, so which is related to climate change. So I'm really kind of linked into that. And also, I did work with Meta in Myanmar, which is supported by Christian Aid, and which does, in a way, very similar things. This type of agricultural development using indigenous knowledge and accessible techniques. And also, one of the things which was mentioned, I think, in the material that we looked at on the during the watch party for the Christian Aid event a week or so ago, which was about them losing land for plantation investments. And I did some work with Meta and some of their staff through action research, and the similar thing was happening with land being grabbed in large amounts by the Chinese business and the Burmese army. So all of those things were kind of reflected in the experience in Guatemala. And I think there are some common themes around the world, and this really brings out some really important issues. So I really appreciate the material.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, absolutely. I think there are so many commonalities for what we see in Guatemala and other countries. And I think, you know, we intentionally haven't discussed land grabbing or kind of monoculture and palm oil and things like that in the presentation, because it's quite a sensitive thing to talk about. And it also, because of kind of big corporations, it puts people at risk if we shine a light on some of those controversial issues. So intentionally so, we aren't necessarily talking as much about land grabbing, but it is an issue they face. And so what COICOP does very, very well is help them fight for their land rights and to not sell their land to big corporations and to maintain that. I actually saw this really powerful thing when we were driving to Amelia's community. So there's palm oil plantations all around, and they're not native. And so what palm oil does is it sucks up all the water, and it makes it really hard to grow crops. But there was one gentleman who refused to sell his land. So you're driving through to Amelia's house and it's palm oil everywhere. And then this one space of land, which is just forest, and it looks very Amazonian. And it's just completely untouched because this one man has just refused. And it's interesting to see the community's relationship with land grabs and kind of their homes, because they recognize that, you know, with palm oil and other big companies comes, you know, income sources for them, jobs, etc. but it also takes away their land. So it's a really difficult situation to be in. But as I said, our appeal intentionally focuses on climate change because that's the bit that Christian Aid funds. But there is that wider context for what they experience. It's just that for safety reasons, we aren't talking about it and highlighting it too much because we want to protect the communities that we serve.
I think the other good thing about it is you bring out the fact that the people that you're working with in this particular area are predominantly Maya, and the people I was working with in Burma were Kachin and Karen and Shan, and not from the dominant ethnic group, and that makes quite a big difference too. And I think that it's good to recognize that in this situation.
Yeah, I'll just tell you one other quick story, which was we had a driver who was from Guatemala City. And when you collect content, how it works is you typically have a driver that is with you for the whole trip. So Guatemala City is about 8 hours away. So we met him there, and he was really excited to do the trip with us and to stay local with us. And so when we were, we drove 8 hours, and when we started visiting the communities, he would obviously come with us because he was driving, and he would come inside and greet everyone. And he said to me one day that he didn't know these people existed. It had blown his mind that there were people speaking another language in Guatemala. And I said, did you not, is this not something you covered at school? And he said, no, I had no idea these people were here. And the Quechua community are the largest indigenous community in Guatemala. And so for someone to not know, and this gentleman was in his 30s and had never heard of them, it shows you the level of isolation that these communities face.
Thank you so much, Jay, and also thank you for the additional questions that people have had. For the sake of time, I will move things on to, because we've still got lots to talk about, which is great, to chat from Darren about why do we speak in churches, but please do pop any questions you've got in the chat. We do want to cover them in the Q&A towards the end. So I will pass on to Darren.
Brilliant, thanks, Lily. And I was going to ask if you could share the screen, but you've already done it, so that's brilliant. So just before I dive into why do we speak in churches, I just wanted to highlight in the chat box, Jay mentioned the Changemakers Conference in her presentation, and a few of you mentioned it in your questions. There's some fantastic interviews from Gerardo, who's our Guatemala program officer, and Donaldo, who works for CoinCart. And I really encourage you, if you weren't a part of the Changemakers Conference on the day, they're all up on the website, and the link is in the chat box. You can watch back all the conversations and the interviews, which goes into some more detail as well. So just a little plug for that as well. So hi, everyone. My name's Darren Staunton. I'm the Church Engagement and Fundraising Manager for Christian Aid. And wanted to just share a little bit about why do we speak in churches? Why do we volunteer our time to speak in churches? And at Christian Aid, we believe in a world where every person is valued, where every life is dignified. We believe that everyone is equal in the sight of God, yet we know that we live in a world where poverty still persists. And it's a stark reality that many people around the globe continue to suffer, not by choice, but because of the circumstances that are completely beyond their control. And we heard a little bit about that with Jay in terms of Aurelia saying that they didn't cause the climate crisis, but they received the greatest impact of the climate crisis. And poverty, as we know, is more than just a lack of resources. It's an outrage against humanity. It strips people of their dignity. It keeps them from reaching their full potential, and it allows injustice to thrive. And in places where poverty holds sway, opportunities are limited, dreams are deferred, and hope often feels out of reach. But the good news is that together we have the power to change this. We have the power to transform lives and to lift people out of poverty. And that's what you and Christian Aid have been doing for over the last 80 years. For the past 8 decades, we have stood with the poorest of our global neighbours, those who are often overlooked and forgotten. And in 37 countries around the world, we work with people from all walks of life, people of different faiths, people of no faith at all. But we share one common vision, and that is to stand up for dignity, equality, and justice. So Christian Aid's mission is not just about charity, it's about justice. It's about addressing the root causes of poverty and inequality. It's about empowering people to break free from the cycles of injustice that trap them. And we are committed to creating a world where everyone can live a life free from indignity of extreme poverty. But we can't do it alone, and that's why we need each other. Our voices, our actions, and our prayers are stronger together. And that's why you, in your role as a volunteer speaker, is so vital. With your help, we can reach even more worshippers, churches, more communities, and more people. And we can invite them to fundraise, to give, to act, and to pray for a world without the injustice of extreme poverty. So we all come to church to worship, to pray, and to grow in our faith. But church is also a place where we can connect with the needs of the world around us. And that's again where the role of the volunteer speaker for Christian Aid can come in. Next slide, please, Lily. And one of the most powerful ways we can help this Christian Aid Week is by sharing the stories of those whose lives have been transformed by their work. I want to encourage you to take time to reread or read the church contact pack, read the quotes from Aurelia and Amelia, their background, situation in Guatemala, and the impact that COINCOP has had on their lives. Again, watch the video and just let it soak in as you prepare for this Christian Aid Week. It will help us confidently and authentically share the project impact. Next slide, please. So one of the most important roles we have as volunteer speakers is encouraging others to get involved. Christian Aid, as you know, relies on the generosity of many people and has done for the last 80 years who are willing to support the work. And fundraising is a huge part of that. But fundraising isn't just about giving money, it's about giving our time, our skills, and our energy to help raise awareness and funds for the cause. Next slide, please, Lily. I love the way that Henry Nouwen puts in his book, The Spirituality of Fundraising. They say fundraising is precisely the opposite of begging. When we seek to raise funds, we are not saying, please, could you help us out because lately it's been hard. Rather, we are declaring, we have a vision that is amazing and exciting. We are inviting you to invest yourself through the resources that God has given you, your energy, your prayers, and your money, and in this work to which God has called us. So I want to encourage us to be unashamedly inviting congregations to give. Sometimes it can be a bit embarrassing and we can say, oh, if you've got time or if you've got the money, but actually this is an opportunity for us to encourage them to give and to join in what God is doing, not for our benefit, but for the benefit of our global family. Next slide, please. But we're also encouraging our congregations that we speak to do three things. The first one, as I've mentioned, is to give or to fundraise, which is very different. You know, give of your time, give of your money, but also can you fundraise and encourage other people to give as well? So whether that's a financial donation, fundraising through an event, or even sharing a message with others in their networks and their communities away from church, you know, the local groups, the local community groups that they might go to, their friends, their family, their WhatsApp groups as well. And the second one is to act, whether it's volunteering on behalf of Christian Aid or getting involved in their local church fundraiser, advocating for justice or taking part in our campaigns are all ways that we can act. And finally, but actually most importantly, is to pray. It's lifting up the work of Christian Aid and the people that Christian Aid serve in prayer. These three things go hand in hand. And when a congregation embraces this approach, it becomes a real powerful force for change. Next slide, please, Lily. Thank you. And again, I'm sure you'll agree with me that Christian Aid is more than just a charity, and it's an extension of our faith. Jesus calls us to love our neighbours, and those neighbours can be on the other side of the world. Our role as volunteer speakers reminds us that this love isn't just about what we do within the four walls of our building. It's about what we do beyond it. It's about being the hands and the feet of Christ, those in need, wherever they are. So when we stand in front of a congregation and share what Christian Aid is doing, it's about helping people connect the dots between their faith and their actions. Our faith is meant to move us into action. We sing about it in church. So whether that's giving, acting, or praying. And Christian Aid is an avenue for that action. So every time we speak, I want to remind that it's not just about raising money. It's about living out our calling as Christians to serve those who are suffering. And then finally, point 5, uniting us as a church family. So finally, when we support Christian Aid, we are reminded that we are part of a much larger family, a global family of believers working together to serve those in greatest need. This work isn't just about one person or one church. It's about the body of Christ coming together to bring hope and healing. And when we speak in churches, we are encouraging congregations to stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters around the world, joining together to make the world a better place. So can I just finish by saying thank you for being a volunteer speaker for Christian Aid, whether this is your first year doing it or whether you've been doing it for many years, for believing in our vision and inviting others to join in on our vision, and for taking the opportunity to speak in churches or community groups or fundraising events and inspiring the congregation to join the dots, to be part of uniting our global family, for putting our faith into action, and finally to share the incredible impact we know is possible through the work of Christian Aid. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Darren. Lily, can we just go back to the previous slide for a second? Hello, everyone. My name is Frances and I'm the Faith Communications Lead at Christian Aid. And I feel like I have one of the very best jobs at Christian Aid, though I'm sure everyone would say that, because I get to get involved with a little bit of everything. So I get to go out to churches and speak, as you'll be doing on a volunteer basis. But I also get to be familiar with the stories of people like Amelia and Aurelia, kind of from almost from day one. As soon as colleagues come back from the trip, we start talking about those stories and the resources that we're going to provide for Christian Aid Week. So I've spent a long time with those stories that Jay shared, and that has been a tremendous privilege. It really has. You find that the people who are in those stories, as I'm sure they are with you, if you've done several Christian Aid Weeks with us now, they stay with you. Those stories stay with you. And it is those stories, those lived experiences, the reality of life for people in Guatemala that we try to ensure lead us in our creation of all our resources for churches. So this is very much wanting to be led by what they've said, not just about their faith, but about their experience, what's going on for them, and to try to reflect that in all the resources that we offer. So we do have quite a lot of things on offer, and if you have done this for us before, you might be familiar with some of these. I wanted to mention firstly that though it's not one of the set lectionary readings for a Christian Aid Week Sunday, there was nonetheless this passage from Romans, this verse that stood out in terms of expressing the kind of hope that we are seeing being lived out, the hope in action that we see being lived out in these communities in Guatemala. And when we were talking earlier about the situation with land, also the situation with water, you're really struck by how Amelia, Aurelia and their neighbours, they keep going and they have this hope, this vision of things getting better, even in the face of these extraordinary changes that they've seen with water levels dropping and things becoming harder and harder and temperatures rising. They hold on to that hope. They don't give up. So we've allowed that to lead us in creating these resources. Their hope is leading us. And so you'll see themes of hope throughout the resources and this language of abounding hope that along with the fullness of life that we often talk about, which Jesus talks about and which Christian Aid, we believe, belongs to everyone here and now, that everyone should have a full life free from poverty. We also want to talk about abounding, flowing hope. And we connect some of that with kind of the abundance that we want to see return
for these communities, their abundance in terms of their ability to grow crops, their water sources to be refreshed, and through these new techniques and trainings for them to find that fullness that is theirs, that belongs to them and should not be taken from them. So I would really encourage you, please, if you have some time, as well as getting familiar with those stories, have a look through our resources for churches, our different worship resources that we have. There might be some things in there that can inspire you. It might be that the places that you're going to speak at, maybe using some of these in their worship or in their event, whatever it is. These include sermon notes, which you're of course encouraged to use, but also some other things as well. So if we can go on to the next slide, Lily. Thank you. So these are our main resources that we're offering to churches outside of the fundraising resources this year. So we have an adaptable order of service, the idea being that you can pull little bits of it out and use whatever bit works for you, or you can kind of run it through from beginning to end. But if contexts do want to use a bit here, a bit there, if you are looking for a prayer, if that's appropriate for the context that you've been asked to speak at, please feel free to just pull something out of the order of service. That's what it's there for. And there are also some readings throughout the order of service that tell, Aurelia's story. That's typo by me, Aurelia's story. So someone can read through those, and that will lead people there through the story. We have an accompanying PowerPoint that goes along with that, an all-age service guide, which has already been super popular. We've had lots of people downloading that, and a PowerPoint that goes along with that. Our prayer pack takes some material out of the order of service and pops it in a shorter resource that is easy to just use and pull out. It's just the prayers as opposed to some of the liturgy and readings and things from the order of service. A children's activity sheet that's printable, the sermon notes that I mentioned, and again, that's another way to look at and encounter Aurelia and Amelia's experiences and stories. We have them summarised there, and also we're connecting those scripture passages with their experiences, and our daily devotional, which is more for people to use perhaps individually or in small groups throughout the week, but again, could be another useful resource for you to look at. So I think if we move on to the next slide, Lily, Darren will talk about fundraising resources, but if you have any questions about those resources for churches, please do pop them in the chat, and we're going to have one of our small groups. We'll talk a little bit more about the Bible passages that you might be asked to speak on if you'd like to join that. Thank you.
Fantastic. So just a few resources that I want to highlight. The first one, I just want to encourage you to order and bring church collection envelopes with you to your speaking engagements. Maybe order a good bulk of envelopes that then you can bring to the multiple if you're doing multiple services or fundraising events as well. I'm speaking from experience because I once went to a service, I'd run out of envelopes, and somebody came up to me really keen to respond to the message and say that they wanted to give, and I didn't have an envelope to give them, and I committed to always make sure I have at least one envelope in my back pocket just in case anybody wants to give in that way. The second thing I wanted to let you know as well is you should be connected to your local CFO, your church engagement fundraising officer, who would be your go-to person in terms of volunteer speaking. If you're not, please let us know. We'll make sure that we connect you with your regional person. But they will also have extra resources that they'll be able to send you. So that might be impact reports. A lot of time that people ask the question of, well, tell me in every £1 how much of the £1 goes to our overseas aid. You know, questions like that, and that's kind of broken down in our impact report. And we also have a bit of a snazzier, because the impact report is quite meaty. We have a shorter flyer as well with more information, which you'll be able to provide as well. So just be thinking about the talk being a good part of the day, but not the only part of the day. We also have that kind of follow-up resources where people might come and ask more questions. How can we resource our congregational supporters in that way? And there's many different types of resources that we'd be able to provide you with, that one being an example. Maybe some updates on our emergency work and recent updates on that as well. You can also order Christian Aid bunting online as well, which you may want to do to decorate the space as well. And then finally, the last one is a gift star device. Now, this is a way of taking contactless donations directly via the phone, via your mobile phone. It works the opposite of if you went to a shop and you paid using a contactless card or a mobile and you tapped on the reader. It works the complete opposite, but all you need for it is a working smartphone. And again, I want to encourage you to sign up for that. Your local CFO will be able to sign you up for that. And again, the reason I encourage this is because in one service that I was in, somebody wanted to donate and they didn't have cash with them. And because we had the option to give contactless, they were able to give a donation, which they said they wouldn't have done. You know, they wanted to respond immediately. If they went home, they may have forgotten about it. It's an immediate opportunity for people to give when they're moved to give, when maybe God moves them to give, or they feel an emotional, wanting to emotionally respond as well. So again, great opportunity to have that as a resource as well. Thank you.
Right, now we're going to move into kind of the breakout rooms. I've set them up so that you should be able to pick whichever one you feel is most relevant and interesting for yourself. If you do find yourself kind of stuck in the main room, don't worry, I'm staying in the main room, so I can certainly help with kind of assigning you to the place that you'd like to be. So I'll open those up now, and I'll be bringing people back around 8:20 to allow 10 minutes for any kind of last questions that people have. So I'll open those now.
I was just going to say, do we want the leaders of the breakout rooms just to give a very quick overview of what you'd be coming to so that you know what to choose? And also, Lily, we're going to come back at 8:15, so we've got a little bit more time for a couple of the questions. That's okay.
Yeah.
Batanai, do you want to talk about?
Oh
no. I was going to say, should we do them in order?
I'll do in order, yeah. So number one, my first Christian Aid week, what to expect, top tips and questions. So if this is your first time volunteering and you just want to ask any questions, and I've also got a few top tips and good practice as well. So please feel free to come and join me in room 1. Thank you.
Number 2 is joining Francis and me in a deeper dive into the passages of scripture that you might be using if you're speaking in a church service. So we'll have a look at the ones for the 11th of May and maybe some of the other ones as well. We'll talk about the Bible passages, try and think about the links there are to the stories, and have a look at the sermon notes.
Hello again, everyone. Apologies if anyone would cut off mid-sentence there. It's always the risk of bringing people back into the main room. But now onto our Q&A section. So if you have any questions, if you feel more comfortable popping it in the chat, that's absolutely fine. I will read out questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I'll call your name out to ask your question on the mic.
Can I just address a question that came into the chat earlier on around the government's decision to cut international aid? Sorry, I'm just getting my a bit of a response that you might want to use as part of talk. So I'll copy and paste what I'm about to say into the chat as well, and we will provide this afterwards. We do have a response as well that is like an official Christian Aid response, and we'll share that toolkit as well with you after this Zoom. But a response that I've written that might be helpful to just incorporate into talks. Says, as you'll be aware, these are challenging times. Christian Aid partners are working with communities impacted by the wars in Gaza and the wider Middle East, Ukraine and Sudan. With the recent news about further aid cuts in the UK and the huge impact on US aid, the support from churches is even more important as we continue to seek to tackle poverty and injustice around the globe. Your continued support is so valuable. Thank you very much. So that's just a quick...
That sounds a little bit weak to me. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
I'm old enough to remember when, the 0.7% campaign started, and it took us, nigh on 30 odd years to get to it, and it's taken us less than 10 years for it to be smacked back down again.
Yeah, so in no way am I implying that's the only thing that you can say, Will. What I'm saying is if you wanted to incorporate just a mention of it into your talk, that's something that you can do, you know, towards the end of the talk as well. And we will provide some more responses of Christian Aid's response and ways that we can engage as well in the toolkit as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you.
And I think Patrick made a stronger statement at the time that you can kind of quote him on, that we'll include in the follow-up email. That Patrick being the CEO of Christian Aid.
There's another question in the chat about the Christian Aid volunteer portal. I can answer that. So we're very much aware that the portal has not been particularly user-friendly over these past few years. And so we're currently, as a volunteering team, exploring an alternative portal that's going to be better use. So it's likely to be something called Volunteero, which we've had a chat with them, and it just looks a lot more user-friendly for people, a lot easier to see kind of your profile and also other opportunities. So as soon as that becomes available, we will be letting all our volunteers know. So just wanted to answer that question. And I can see that a hand is raised. Is that Michael?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, could I just say something about the portal, because it was me who put that question. Sorry, Michael, to interrupt. So it's not open at the moment. I mean, you can't enter it at the moment. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And when that's fine. So when you do the new one, will the records that we've entered in the previous portal of talks given and things like that, will they be transferred to the new one?
Yes, we're hoping to be able to integrate the information onto the new portal.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the information, because it has happened before that I couldn't get in, but then it came back. So knowing what's happening is really helpful, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, we're very aware of the issues.
Been on that this afternoon. It seems to be working perfectly all right this afternoon.
I think it's a bit glitchy. We're very aware that some people seem to manage to get into it, and then other people really struggle to get into it. So we are hoping that it becomes a bit more of a use rather than it shouldn't be a pain. It should be something that's actually useful.
It's still active. It's still lively at the moment.
No, it wasn't. Well, I used it last week, but I tried it tonight several times and I couldn't get into it. So I think there is a problem with it.
Hi, I'm sorry, I can see that you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi. It's just about resources, really. Last year, I got through the post an order form. I ordered resources. Is it the only way to do it now online? To get resources?
No, you can also order like you did last year. So if you've not received that pack, we can make sure that you get the order forms that you can order either online or via post as well.
So if I order online, will it come through the post?
Yep.
Okay, fine.
Yep.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
We come back to Michael.
Yeah, hi. So just a couple of things. So it's my first time as a speaker. I'm assuming if I just want any help or feedback on my talk before I give it, at my best just contacting my CEFO. Is that probably the best protocol?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, so your local CFOs are your best person to speak to, and they will either connect you or point you to whatever the resources that you might need. So exactly, any kind of questions around your talk or preparation for that, they're the best person. I'd say if it's anything to do with the kind of logistics side of volunteering, so maybe the portal or expenses or anything like that, it's the volunteering team, which would be Lily's team. Lily, if you could put the email into the chat, that'd be great. So the kind of logistics side, that would be that. But anything to prepare you for the talk or resource or anything like that, go direct to your local CFO and they'll be able to help you out.
Fantastic. And just one more thing. Is there the ability for congregations to be able to donate online? Could we have something as simple as a QR code flashing up on a slide so that people can just scan on their phones and donate that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an integrated fundraising page, which can do all of that. So it's got you can have unique URLs, which web links to the church, and it will go directly to the church. You can connect it to the church or to the group, so that you'll know exactly how much a church has fundraised as well. And then that provides a QR code as well, which again, like you say, Michael, you could put that up on the screen and just everybody can scan their phone. And then the other one is, as I mentioned before, is the GiveStar app, which allows you to just take donations directly on the day via mobile phone, and it just works in reverse of paying for. It's the NFC, which is on many smartphones. It's the opposite. It works the opposite way. But again, your local CFO will be able to help you with that.
Great. Any more questions?
Enid?
Go ahead, Enid.
She's muted.
Oh, I'll unmute you. See if I can mute you. Oh, I can't seem to unmute. Karen, can you unmute Enid?
No, I've pressed a button to ask Enid to unmute. See if that works. But there we go.
There we go, Enid.
Got it done. I was doing the wrong one. It's more to do with being a Christian Aid supporter. And it was mentioned, climate justice. Should we not all be haranguing our MPs, if they're Labour anyway, about the situation of cutting aid? I've had a reply back from my MP, and he just said, well, we've got to spend the money on arms. Not that we've got all these millionaires we could be taxing, but no, we've got to cut overseas aid because we're spending more on arms. Well, to me, it's immoral. Sorry, that's what I wanted to say.
As well as providing the pack afterwards with lots of with our statements on this, I might just pop a link in the chat to a piece in the Independent that Patrick, our CEO, wrote, which also gives you some quite forceful language on that. And yeah, absolutely. This ties in with the Restore campaign that we've mentioned that we've got going. So please do check that out as well, to see what we're saying about that, and that's got a lot of information about how to approach your MP around these issues. So yeah,
I'd also add,
Well, I would have done it.
I'd add that there's an article in The Economist about world aid and how it is changing. I'm afraid it's contracting, and it's worth reading and seeing what it says.
We always do a follow-up email from this training with links to all the resources we've mentioned, but also other things. So that will probably be coming next week or the week after, when we've kind of pulled the videos together and everything from tonight as well. So we'll definitely put links to the articles and wording you can use in that email, so it will all be together in one place.
one other thing perhaps just to mention on this is that whilst quite rightly speaking strongly and being outraged about this, it's also can be helpful to emphasize to people, particularly people who might not kind of be familiar with Christian Aid, that the work goes on, that we work in a whole diverse range of ways with a diverse range of partners, and that whilst cuts to sources of aid funding are serious, because we have this diverse approach with this wide range of partners, this doesn't make it impossible for us to continue our work, because that is one of the risks, is that people can feel hopeless, like there's no point, like everything's falling apart, and therefore can't make a difference anymore. And we need to assure people that that's not the case, that the programs are active, and that their donations will make a huge difference.
I think that's very important, because if you set yourself up as against the government, you're setting yourself for a fall. What you basically need to do is deal with that dilemma for the people who are giving. If you set people against your government, I think you've lost.
I think I'll move on now just because we're going to have our kind of final blessings and kind of closing up, but that doesn't mean that if you've got any questions that come to mind later on that you can't get in touch with us. I have popped the volunteering email address in the chat. Feel free to send any follow-up questions and we'll make sure that they get sent to the right people or we can respond to them. So thank you so much for everybody's questions. And I will move on now to the final blessings.
I had to put it on the screen, but I will. Sorry, I had a prayer that I had put in the PowerPoint. Can you share it again, Lily, or is it?
Is it this one, the Christian Aid Week?
Yes, I just couldn't see it on the Zoom.
Lily, your
Sorry, I've not
screen isn't
reshared my
sharing
screen,
anymore.
have I?
Yeah.
Apologies.
That's okay. Great. So this prayer I took from the prayer pack, and it's also, I think, in the order of service. This is the prayer for Christian Aid Week 2025. And I thought it was a really nice way of kind of bringing together the things we've talked about this evening. And if you want to share in an amen at the end, that would be great. Lord, you are faithful to your promises. Through the Spirit, you bless us with abounding hope. When power seeks to silence justice, give us the courage to raise our voice. When an end to poverty seems far off, renew our faith in your kingdom come on earth. When our neighbour reaches out, inspire us to respond with overflowing love. In Jesus' name, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Just to highlight as well that we'd love you to join us in prayer at our prayer lunch at the beginning of Christian Aid Week, or the second day, I should say, the Monday of Christian Aid Week. We'll be led in prayer by our CEO, Patrick Watt, as well, and joined by staff and volunteers and supporters from around the world, around our global family. It's a wonderful time together, so please put it in your diary if you're free on the Monday the 12th of May at lunchtime, 12:30 p.m. And again, all those details of how to sign up will be made available to you in the follow-up email. Thank you.
And the very last thing I was going to say, which I realised we were going to put in earlier, and I don't think we did, was coming soon to a website near you is a very exciting new change, which is we are going to have a web form for churches to use to book speaking engagements, which will then go directly into our systems, and then we will be able to contact you with those. But it's a great way if you're thinking, I really love speaking for Christian Aid and I only get to do it usually around Christian Aid Week, but I wonder if there's ways to get more of these talks and be sharing more about the work, then please do encourage churches you know to use the web form. It's much easier now to book a speaker, or it will be when it launches in the next week or two. So we will try and send the link to that in the email as well. So that'll be an easier way for churches to request a speaker, and then you will still be able to get all the information that you usually get with a kind of form at the end of that process, but it'll be much easier for them, much easier for us at the other end, and hopefully just as good a service for you. So we'll send you the link to that as soon as it's live, and you can share it out with other churches that you might know.
Thank you so much, everyone. That's the end of our session. So we hope you have a lovely rest of your evening, and I'm sure we'll be keeping in touch.